As many of you know, I founded Mendez SoHo in 2013, initially as a website only, celebrating the creative legacy of my late husband, Louis Mendez, whose work you see all around you. In 2015, I expanded the platform to include the Salon series, reviving Louis and my long history of showcasing other artists' work. Recognizing the importance of Louis's years at Alfred University, as well as our frequent travels in shaping Louis's long career and artistic explorations, I, along with other family members, and one of whom is over here, my son Aaron, we established an endowed scholarship at Alfred to support educational travel as an important complement to academic studio work. I would like to thank those here today who have contributed to the fund, and I encourage others to support positive causes to the extent their means allow, as a small but important antidote to the fraught and uncertain times in which we find ourselves. We can't change the world. We can't even change the election. But we can make a difference. And now, please welcome Amy Jacobson, Director of Plant Giving at Alfred University, who will introduce today's guest of honor, Michael Haleta, the first, but certainly not the last, recipient of the Mendez Scholarship Award.
Thank you. It's such a privilege to be here. Being here among Louis's amazing work, we witnessed the ways in which his work was inspired and informed by international and intercultural influences. Right, so it's just amazing to have this experience in this space surrounded by that work. Diane and her family, through the fund at Alfred, have made that intercultural connection and inspiration possible for AU students. So that value placed on intercultural connection, the things that we all share and the things that can inspire us further is amazing, and I think prescient. Your vision for this has been inspiring in and of itself, and it's been a pleasure to work with Diane and her family on this. And it also is very much in keeping with Alfred's vision for making sure that our students have opportunity for interacting with the world beyond and being inspired by that. So experiences that go beyond the studio, that go beyond the classroom, is something that we're really, really dedicated to, and having Diane and family be part of that, inspired by Louis's history and his ties to Alfred, has been wonderful. So I'm pleased to introduce Michael. Michael Haleta is a multimedia artist and sound designer, currently an MFA student majoring in electronic integrated arts at Alfred. He brings to his studies a wide range of experience. Being a master's student at Alfred is one of those wonderful, unique things where somebody like Michael comes with a wealth of experience and then expands upon that. He's worked in many creative environments, and he has taught sound design and graphic design. So he's a student and yet has been a teacher at the Maryland Institute College of Art and Mercer County Community College. With support from the Louis Mendez Fund, Michael participated, and he said I could say it in English, the Electronic Music Studios conference in Stockholm. Michael, I'm not sure that my Swedish is up to the task of that long word. So Michael will tell us about his experience in Sweden, as well as the symbolic relationship between his visual and oral designs. And I just want to end with something that Diane said, is that organized and purposeful travel has tremendous potential to shape students' perceptions of others and themselves, as well as the connections we all share. And that emphasis on the connections we all share is so important, and thank you for bringing us to that and bringing Michael here. Thank you.
before I actually jump into this, I forgot. So my background, I'm from the suburbs of New Jersey, Lawrenceville, which is located right between Trenton and Princeton, which worked out really well for me. Trenton, when I was growing up, had this amazing nightclub. It was called City Gardens, and they had tons of rock bands. Nirvana played there before they became the Nirvana that we know of. Also industrial and avant-garde acts, and so I would sneak out of my room at my parents' house and attend some of these rock shows or sound events, and that inspired me greatly. And then on the other side of the fence was Princeton, and when I was growing up in high school, I worked at the Princeton Record Exchange, and that was immensely important to me, because my background is graphic design as well as visual art and sound. So for me to dig through the crates and find these wonderful gems from the 60s and the 70s, avant-garde electronics and free jazz records, which were immensely important to me early on in terms of chaos within structure and improvisation within structure. But not only the audio that was pressed onto the vinyl, it was also the gatefolds, these beautifully printed materials that made me appreciate fonts and kerning and leading, the space in between lines of text and all of that nerdy graphic design stuff. Anyways, a bit of sound, a bit of visuals right up front. But the key thing was, one of the records that I ran into, and this leads me back to where I left off of the trip to Stockholm, was a Karl-Heinz Stockhausen record, and he had made it at this weird studio in Stockholm, which was called EMS, which is where I just came back from. And so he was working there, he was engineering some of his records there, and the studio has two really amazing modular synthesizers there, which aren't digital at all. They're more about controlled voltage, controlling the flow of electricity from one module to the next. So you may have a delay module hooked up to a flanger or phaser, and if you're sending audio through that line of audio, you can affect it, you can sculpt it. In a sense, you can paint with sound. And it's nowadays, there are tons of audio programs that you can simply access through your laptop. These are actually physical patch bays. So they're wonderful instruments. I was really grateful for Mats Lindstrom and Gabrielle and Henrik and Danielson, who make up EMS, the tech crew there, and the people that run it and look after it. When I was growing up, when I was at Princeton Record Exchange, I took a side note of EMS, and from that point on, the pictures that I saw of the synthesizers there, that just became a dream of mine. And right now, I've been able to go there and live it and do research there and incorporate it into my work. So I'm so grateful to the Mendez family for that. Okay. Long story short, I'm going to go take you through a couple of processes that I'm using now, incorporating light, grids, even sound into some of these grids as well, and then take you into the trip and my stay at Stockholm, and then I'll end on current work. So this first grid was made probably about 3.5 years ago. It's a grid which is based on a lot of structure. It's based on an actual grid, and then I worked to pull it apart to inject it with randomness, so that if you squint your eyes, you get a sense of structure or a sense of chaos. Right now, they're functioning for me as textiles, so I'm trying to incorporate them into some of my work, printed work off of paper. So this was taken from my website, xypatterning.tumblr.com, which is largely just an archive of explorations and experiments. This was made a year ago. It's actually a hand-painted grid. So There's a rhythm and an oscillation that I like to inject into my grids so that it's a layer of pattern that's working with a layer of non-patterning, almost randomness. But some of the randomness is connected to the patterning with rule sets. So the logic here may be brown, dark brown, brown, purple, blue. And then that is carried across the picture plane. And that will just be one rule set. And then I'll work to add structure onto that in largely an improvisational way. It's sort of, it's very intuitive. It's what I'm feeling. It's what I've seen also. I like to kind of integrate. I think I did a trip back home and the leaves were changing. So I try to let sort of influence and my just daily color seep into these. This was another grid like the last, but this was improvised on gridded paper. You can see there are motifs that happen. This one's a little bit different than the last in a sense that I treat the picture plane as just a unit, just a flat object. Fill it with one shape and then go from there. So it's very simple math, but with color you can kind of trick the eyes, and it's almost like optical math art.
What is the medium you're using?
Here it's fluorescent markers and water markers, pencils, charcoal, anything really around me during the day. Sometimes I'll have a plan. I'll have a plan of attack, acrylic markers or just pens, like desk pens. This was made last year with the help of a friend. This is a 50-inch by 50-inch grid, and the title for this one is Decay Compiler. So I treated it as almost like a math equation. I started at the top and worked my way down. And my friend worked the opposite way up. So I would assign a color into each shape and create the oscillations. So right now it's completed, and the last stage of this piece, I worked really hard to break up the symmetry, break apart the repetition. But in the early beginnings, there's a logic to it, there's a rhythm, there's an oscillation that happens from top to bottom. And this is fluorescent markers made, earlier this year. Yeah.